So it's another monthly how we align our thoughts with our purpose. And we have an amazing special guest that I'm beyond blessed to have with us today. Miss Mad Scientist, Miss Hannah Roth is our special guest, and she is a living example of living out her thoughts. And on purpose was what she gives every day. And I purposely asked her some set of questions. Yet, Hannah, is there anything you want to share first? Because I know you have some tactical things that you want to share as we work our way through the questions.
Yeah, I just want to encourage anyone to ask any questions. I do have some practical steps I'd like to work through in regards to kind of aligning your thoughts and your purpose to get to where you want to go. So I have a couple exercises. We'll kind of work through those, April, as you ask the questions. And yeah, as you guys know, I think know me that are here right now, you know that I hate presenting. I really like the more collaborative teaching approach. So please, as April said, feel free to interrupt, engage, ask questions, stop me, whatever you feel, because I don't want to just be talking to dead air. So I really like engagement and collaboration. So please feel free to speak up if you have any questions. So
You and I align on that very much. So we very much enjoy engagement and knowing that people are actually living out what we're teaching, working through, collaborating, etc. So the first question I sent you is, what thoughts aligned you to work with Predictive? And because that is how we got connected, and anything you want to share in that.
yeah, so this is actually a big question. So if I start to ramble on, April, please stop me, because I can talk about my teammates and how wonderful they are and how all of our thoughts align, all of those things. I can talk about that for like literal hours. So stop me. I'm going to try to give the truncated version so I don't bore you all to tears. But basically, as some of you may know, I used to have my own business. I was a business owner, and I did interior design, home decor, and then carpentry. So I was a carpenter. And the reason that I got out of that business is because it was very successful, but it got to a point where the business was running me instead of me running the business. I was just working 24/7. My family was suffering. My friends were suffering. I mean, you kind of hear those things all the time, like, oh, we never see you anymore, or when are you going to be done with work? And it was like to the point where even my dogs would like come in at night and like whine at me, like, Mom. So I kind of realized that something had to change. And I ended up reaching out to one of my best friends. Her name's Megan. She's also on our team. She's our operations manager. And she was like, hey, like, you don't have to do all of this alone. Like, I really would love it if you could come, work with us for a little bit, see how you like it. And she had already been telling me for months, about how amazing her bosses were and how the culture was so great. And so for me at the time, I kind of assessed where I was, and it was not an easy decision to close my business, right? Like it was not something I just thought on a whim, I'm going to close my business, but I knew that my physical and mental health were suffering and people around me were suffering. So I knew that I had to make a change. So to April's point, thinking about my thoughts and my purpose, I really wanted to help people, and I really wanted to do something that brought people joy, but I didn't want to do it alone anymore. And so that is sort of, once I came into the Predictive fold, I felt like I had support and I had teammates, and I still got to do this really amazing thing where I get to help people and I get to make a difference, and I get to see people, light up and get happy. And, when we're providing help, or if I'm doing a strategy session, taking a client from point A to point Z where they're in such a much better space. I wish I would have had that for myself at the time when I had my own business. So getting to do that for other people and being aligned with a team that's also their purpose and vision has been super rewarding for me. So that's kind of how I came into Predictive, how I realized that our thoughts and purposes aligned with what I wanted out of my life and my career. And obviously I've been with them now for almost 2 years, and I always tell Steven, he's our CEO, that I'm like a little koala that hangs onto his leg. So if he ever tries to like get rid of me, I'm like, no, you can't. So I'm fully invested.
And Hannah, that is so, Steven actually wrote a book called Profitable Podcasting. And ironically, so many of you probably have books that are sitting on your Audible, and you may or may not have read them. Or they sit there for a while and then you contemplate reading them. And so I eventually read it, and I reached out to Steven. And the amazing thing about anybody that's done a podcast, that you actually reach out to them, they actually answer you. And Steven, her boss, actually replied. And then I started working with Stephen and Eric through a couple different programs. And then I got to meet Hannah through the podcast process. And Hannah has developed with Predictive so amazingly, as Jamie and I've got to watch for the years that we've been with Predictive. And you truly are a mad scientist. So, and how did you get that terminology for mad scientist, as well as, how does it show up personally and professionally for you? How are those thoughts? Because what we created this Q&A about, and then we'll open it up for questions before we go on to the next one, is it's so important that we understand our thoughts do define our purpose and how we live them out. So I would love for you to share more about that, please.
Absolutely. So I obviously shared how I was a business owner. Before that, I was actually a marine biologist. So I used to work in fisheries. I was a data scientist. So we worked with reef fish and all kinds of stuff like that. And I ended up having to move. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the BP oil spill that happened in the Gulf several years ago, but a lot of the money that funded my projects and programs came from that grant. So once that grant was over, the money dried up. As I don't want to get into too much politics, but as administrations change, money changes, funding changes, all kinds of things like that. And I always will have a love of science. That's who I am to my core. But I just kind of realized that I wanted something more stable and steady than trying to chase grants and try to figure out what am I going to do once this money's out and this bucket's gone and all of those things. So that is my background as a scientist. And one of the things that I love about Predictive and I love about my position is that I have a passion and a skill set for science. I am good at data. I have certain experiences in my life that predispose me to knowing things about data, how to analyze data, how to break it down, and then how to present it. And I think that all of us in the room have certain unique skill sets. We all have certain gifts and talents. And trying to figure out how to leverage that in a way that benefits others and benefits me in my current position was something that I really was intentional about. So one of the exercises, April, if it's okay, that I would like, you guys to engage in or think about, even if you don't do it right now, is think about your passions. Think about those God-given talents and gifts that you have, the passions that you've had, maybe even as a kid. I remember being a kid and going to SeaWorld and I was like, I'm going to be a scientist. And that was kind of where that whole dream started. But I've always had this passion for science. And so I want you guys to think about those things that sometimes we grow out of or talk ourselves out of, but some of those things in your heart that you still have a passion for. And then I would encourage you, this is something we do with our clients, to write down 25 to 50 things that we call them your superpower list. So if you have any, those unique talents, those unique passions, those unique skill sets, try to write those down, 25 to 50. And you'll start to see, even if it's something funny that you don't think could be used in your current role or title, write it down anyway, because you never know how you can take something. So for instance, for me, I love to teach and I love to take the complex and make it simple. I like to make exercises. And so that is one of my gifts, is that I can take something complex and break it down into something simple. So when I was working through this myself, I thought, okay, how can this benefit other people? How can I use this natural gift and talent? How can I align my purpose to benefit the most people possible? And what I did is I listed my 25 superpowers. I honed in on that one. And then I also listed certain business challenges that I know our clients face. So a lot of you in this room have probably felt this way before, but one of the things that we hear a lot is that agency owners and consultants and coaches, they're so overwhelmed and they don't know how to get it all done. It's 50 million things hit your plate. Some of you are solopreneurs, you don't have a whole team of people to delegate to. So we hear a lot about overwhelm, constant overwhelm. And so I was thinking, okay, I have a skill set where I can make, frameworks, and I can create exercises, I can teach. So how can I align that with these business challenges that our audience is facing? And so from that, we create frameworks. We have a ton of resources that are free in our resource library. April and Jamie, I know you guys are super familiar with all of those. So yeah, so I think just taking your passion that you have, writing down those 25 to 50 things that are your unique talents or skill sets, and then focusing on the business challenges that your audience faces, and seeing where they overlap and how you can potentially use those to your benefit and to benefit those in your audience. So I hope that was helpful. I think that answered your question, April. Sorry, I went off on a little tangent there.
It was beautiful, actually, and I'll open it up for questions before we go into one more, because going back to, I was waiting for you to go to the 25 clients, the dream clients, because we know all your terminology.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate the superpowers, and I'm going to open it up. Does anybody want to guess any of Hannah's superpowers, or share any of yours, or ask any questions before we keep moving on?
I really want you guys, I'm gonna pick on you guys if you don't share. I want to know a superpower, because sometimes when I ask this question to our clients, they get super shy. It's like they turtle, and they're, I understand, I'm an introvert too, but I want this to be like a session where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna write down 25 things I'm awesome at. This is me bragging. It's totally fine. So that is this space. So I'm gonna call on you guys and ask you some of your superpowers if you don't share.
Who wants to go first? And Stephen, I'm not sure what happened on yours. I guess Stephen's having a challenge getting his camera up and running on his message. So we'll get him all set up. Who's brave to go first?
Go.
Dina, go girl.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't get all 25 listed yet. I've got about 10,
Okay.
something like that. Okay, so how many do you want?
However many you want to share.
Okay, I can be funny. I love to teach. Public speaking is, I love doing that. I'm sympathetic, empathetic. I'm an extrovert. I'm compassionate, integral, confident. And that's where I kind of finished.
I love that, Dina. And a lot of those that you listed are unique, because so you mentioned you're an extrovert. That's probably something that comes very natural to you every day. That's the way you live. So to you, and this is the point of going through this exercise, that may not seem like something unique because you live that every day. But for me, I look at people like you that are extroverts, and I'm like, oh, wow, I wish I could, I wish I could have some of those tendencies and qualities. So it is a unique superpower. And, empathy, sympathy, the fact that you love to teach, and the fact that you're good at public speaking, all of those things can be used in a business sense. You can turn all of those skill sets into helping your clients succeed. So I love that you shared that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carly, you came up. Are you ready?
Yeah, I didn't write anything down, but to keep from getting called on, just off the top of my head.
I'm very mean.
I was going to say good sense of humor, easy to relate to, good listener, easy to adjust. I like change. A lot of people shy away from change and can't handle it, but I actually prefer change. And then I'm kind of can be a weakness and be a strength, but I'm an empath. So, depending on how that goes, or how, the people you're around, affect you one way or the other. But just off the top of my head, that was some of the ones that I thought of right off the bat. So
beautiful.
So Charlie, since you volunteered and I didn't get to call on you and put you on the spot, I do want to ask you, so how do some of those superpowers manifest in your day-to-day business? How do you use your empathy? Or you mentioned that you are adaptable to change, so you have a certain agility to kind of roll with the punches and not get stuck in certain habits. So how has that manifested for you in a business sense?
Well, in the position I'm in now, which is a very new position to me, being able to accept change has been huge for me, because it's kind of been OJT. I've been kind of learning on the fly a lot, but also I brought some of my changes to the new business. But our scheduling is very liquid. It fluctuates and changes quite a bit. So being able to think fast on your feet, to be able to improvise, and to make sure that everyone is taken care of or in the right position, has been something that's been easy for me to kind of adapt to. the sense of humor part of it is kind of the thing that always keeps me from losing my mind, I guess, trying to find the lighter side of things, or just always trying to keep an open mind, or like I said, just have a sense of humor about it, not let everything just kill you. And April, I've had a couple of tough weeks the last few weeks. So talking to her has actually been extremely beneficial to me, because she actually feeds off of my humor, and she's actually really easy to talk to. So, but that, and then being able to relate to people, like, whenever you're in charge of people, being able to relate to the position they're in, or being able to relate to their personalities. When you're managing someone, being able to, read the room, is something that's very, very big if you're in management or leadership or whatnot. So being able to relate is probably one of the biggest qualities that I've been able to bring, to this position. So.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hannah, Charlie comments on the fact that I have learned from coaching many men now that joyful sarcasm is a beautiful gift in coaching.
Yeah.
So,
Very much.
and he handles that well, as many of the other gentlemen in the room. Jamie, let's go to you before we lose you. Any superpower you want to share and support Miss Hannah with, or any questions you have for her?
I think Charlie and I are twins in some ways. I would add, and I was trying to dig up the post that I shared with my family long ago. But one of my additional superpowers is creativity. I was one of those gifted students, and so it was, went through the gifted programs, and creativity was a part of everything we did. I love it. Strangely enough, the other side of that superpower is that I also love project management. Like, I love it. Do not give me spontaneous most times. And
that's a unique skill set right there, Jamie, because most of the time when we see creative people, they kind of thrive on the spontaneity. They don't really want to be fit into management. So you're like this unicorn.
Oh, that's really neat. Right. Absolutely. Because I can get the idea, and then it's like, let's go plan it. Come on.
Yep.
It's weird. But clearly, with the business, I also am an empath. I'm a good listener. I have the ability to kind of pull out of people what shift they need, what needs to happen to make them happier. And that's the work I do, right? Is how can I change people's feeling for the positive by helping them feel seen and heard? Yeah, so those are some of my gifts.
So, Jamie, it's so interesting. Speaking of twins, which some people do not know that I am a actual.
Yeah.
I have a twin brother, but I also am a gifted participant. So
okay.
It's interesting. One of the things as we work through layers and how we align our thoughts and our purpose is I'm curious, Jamie, when you went through that journey, and then we'll come back to Miss Hannah on her Mad Scientist and any questions for Miss Hannah, because I have a feeling she probably can relate with the next question I'm going to ask. Along the journey, did you have any challenges with feeling like you lost some friends because you were or you had to be you allowed yourself the opportunity to become bolder, brighter, braver in that journey?
I was a total nerd. I'm still looking for this post. I will find it, and I'm gonna share it with the group. Something about I'm going as a gifted person for Halloween, all the lost hopes and dreams or something. It was very entertaining. I was a total nerd, and so I didn't have a lot of friends during that time because I was always the first one with my hand raised. I was the first one to get all the multiplication tables done because I loved learning. It was like I planned a field trip. I took my whole class. I memorized a tour of the Firehouse Museum and gave my class the tour. Like, I was that nerd. And then the crazy thing happened in my corporate life, and everything was kind of stripped away. So 2008 hit, kind of like you, Hannah. I had to close a business. I lost that business. I lost my first husband. We got a divorce. And then in corporate world, the very last piece of me that confident I'm still good at my job. That final piece was stripped away by a terrible boss. And so this business journey has been a lot of rebuilding and re-acknowledging who I was, who I know I am capable of being, and so I try to come back to those moments of, look at what I used to do. Like, where's that girl? So
Jamie, that was so beautifully said. And I knew Hannah would raise her hand when she said I was the joy of learning and the individual that, and
how
it's
we get
so,
along.
right?
Yeah.
We all, and the gift, and Hannah, this sets us up beautifully because, one of the questions I asked, and then we'll open it up for any other questions, is scientifically because of that mad scientist. And what Jamie just said is that when we learn and we bring all that data to us, and then we give somebody permission to take it away in some form or fashion, that goes back to how do we put our mind and our data back in place to align, right? And I'd love for you to share any more on that, Ms. Hannah.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely accurate. And one of the things that I've struggled with in the past is, and this is when I was a little bit younger and kind of freshly starting out. And Jamie, I also had horrible boss experience at one point. But a lot of my identity was wrapped into what I could do to perform, because I was also like you, Jamie, as a kid, I was always learning. I was in all the gifted programs. I had trophies, like the whole thing, you know what I mean? That was kind of where I found like my self-worth. And so I think that the topic of the Q&A today, how we align our thoughts and our purpose, is really important, because we have to, we want to perform in our jobs and we want to have purpose in our jobs, but we also have to be conscious of our own thoughts and our own purpose and our own identity away from that. Because if we let that kind of overshadow who we are as people, any kind of business failure or struggle or challenge, we start to internalize that and it starts to kind of dim our light. And so I think that, I am a scientist, so science is where I feel comfortable. That's where I live. But I also am a human and I am a person, and I try not to let my identity be so wrapped up in what I can do. And I try to, again, align my thoughts and purpose with who I am as a person, what I like, how I want to serve others. And then kind of the scientist part comes second. That is the vehicle of which, through which that I serve people and that I can be valuable. So does that make sense? I hope I said that in like a concise way.
And Jamie, I appreciate the idea of looking at this as data, because everything is evidence, right? And our brain will look to prove the evidence. So Stephen, you can comment on this if you're fully present. No, the exciting thing, Hannah, Stephen has been in the school district and as well as in the real estate communities and etc. So, and him and I have worked together for many years now. And he has scientifically assessed his thought patterns. And what eye-opening awareness did you receive through that? What supernatural?
Scientifically, that's like, So, I mean, what have I? Yeah, so I recognize that I have certain thought patterns, and not all of them are correct in my understanding of how they directly relate to what I'm involved in, and have on several occasions taken the opportunity to take a step back, evaluate and consult, and acknowledge that I need to have a change in thought patterns. And sometimes or oftentimes, when we find someone that we trust enough to call us on those thought patterns, we should know that we just need to listen to them and do it. And also know, look at April, know that because of our, whatever you want to call it, fouled up thinking,
Or biased,
or bias, thank you, we're going to have an internal argument as to whether it'll work or not work. And sometimes we need the evidence of it actually happening in order to reflect back in our own mind and confirm that that's what we need to be doing. That's a pretty good size nutshell, huh?
I have a question for you. Sorry, I'm like naturally curious, so I'm always
Sure.
gonna have a question. But okay, so when you start to recognize that your current like thought patterns or habits are not leading you in an advantageous direction, how do you kind of reset yourself? And what do you do to break that habit? And then what do you do to establish new thought habits or patterns?
So I don't know that there's not a one answer solves all issues kind of an answer. But identification is the first thing. And then it's taking a breath and taking a step. And it goes back to, if you want the same results, keep doing the same thing. So usually it's symptomatic. The need for change is symptomatic of something that's not in its completion being the way you had expected it to be. Right. So when you start seeing things over and over again, or in my case, I'm getting sensitive to it maybe once or twice that don't end up the way you want them to end up, you have to look at all the parts and pieces. Was it what I did? Was it who I was working with? And if it was who I was working with, what is it that I did? And so once you identify, what's going on, and sometimes that's what coaches are good for, is, you say, hey, I did this, this, and this was the outcome. It was not the desired outcome. What could I have done differently? And then, together come up with a maybe not a solution, but a course of action that will allow you to see what needs to be done, to make the right things, and then just do it over and over again. If you do it once it may work once, but unless you do it over and over again, you're going to in my case, I can speak to me, I tend to fall back on what I know and what is comfortable, even though I know that the end result's not going to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
Hannah, I venture you have one more exercise in you, if you wanted to ask any more of the supernatural powers. But Stephen is, and Brenda may even want to chime in on this, is there's some questions and tools that we use as worksheets for them to clarify through the process. And Hannah, you've spent a lifetime in data and science to be able to assess that. And the scientific tools that we have are actual scientific based assessments, and that are tools that they incorporate into their daily activities and projects. Ironically,
I love it. It's so important to like you mentioned, the daily, habits, daily patterns, all of those things, because it's hard to break. So Stephen, that's why I wanted to ask you that question, because a lot of times we talk with people that kind of know the problem and they're not getting the result outcome that they want. I need to see it again. I missed it.
What choice can I make and action can I take in this moment to create the greatest net value?
Yes. And that's important. I love that you have that on your desk.
I
Because
need
it's
to be
true,
reminded
right?
of it regularly.
Yep. So many people form patterns of thought and habits, and it is discomfort. It is uncomfortable to change and grow sometimes, because as you mentioned, you fall back on, habits and things that you've done in the past. And sometimes, changing those habits can be scary. It can be uncomfortable, but that's ultimately what leads to growth. So I love that you kind of touched on that as well. So yeah, I basically, April, to answer your question, the last kind of exercise I have is, we talked about finding your passion, talking about your passion, writing that down. We talked about listing the 25 to 50 superpowers, the things that you're really good at, the confident things that you're like, I can bring this to the table. And then we talked about maybe writing down the business issues or challenges that your audience faces, and then aligning those kind of, superpowers and passion with those business challenges, turning it into something you can use as the last kind of step to this formula is, how can I use that? How can I use my gifts? How can I align my thoughts and my purpose to benefit people in their unique business issues or challenges? And I think that, the synthesis of those things, the integration of those things is what really makes you a valuable, whatever you do. What if you're a coach, like it brings value because that's your unique kind of cocktail of what you bring to the table, right? It's your passion, it's your superpower, and then it's how you can uniquely apply that superpower to benefit others. So that would be the last kind of step, April, is how can I use that? How can I use my gifts in this kind of business lens, in this business arena? So, Stephen, if you don't mind, I'm going to pick on you again because you broke that down so beautifully. So how do you kind of use that? Is that something that you teach, your clients or your audience when you're breaking these habits or forming new habits to get the better outcome? Is that something that you do and then also teach, or is that something you leverage to kind of help others? Or is that more something internal, or do you use that outwardly too?
So I am not currently a coach professionally.
Okay.
I am no longer a professional teacher, although I spend much of my time doing that. So in my personal business, the goal being meeting the needs that the person that has called me to their home and allowing them to achieve that desire of getting their house sold. Yes, I leverage what I do, and I was the chief negotiator for a teachers union for many years, and did contract negotiation and understand leverage. And so in doing what I do, I do it, and I help, and I'm working with a couple young men right now to help them learn and understand. And April's writing that down. Oh, he's working with them. So I guess, yeah, I open a lot of conversations with, is what you're doing right now working for you?
Yeah.
And the two people that I'm working with right now, the answer is no, because they have big goals. And so my next question is, well, what are you going to do about it? And, how can I help you? Do you have any ideas? And so we go from there. And in working with the two licensed realtors that I'm working with, that's how I've been working with them. With clients, it's, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen twice as much as you talk, and hear what they're saying, identify what their needs are, and then help them to achieve what they want, even if they're standing in the way of themselves getting to that point. And so there is not the art of negotiation, but the ability to negotiate and to show value in why I'm doing what I'm doing to help them reach their goal, reminding them what their goal is regularly.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's very important because I'm sure that this is true of people in general, no matter the industry. People tend to squirrel a little bit. They,
Including
have
me.
a goal. Yeah, me too. They'll try something for a minute and then they're like, oh, it's not working. It didn't work the one time. So I'm going to go over here and try this. So sometimes just, bringing those people back into, hey, don't forget your long-term vision and let's stay the path to get there. So I think that's very important. So awesome. Thank you for sharing, Stephen. I appreciate it. And then I wanted to come back to Dina and ask her a couple questions because she had a pretty good list of superpowers. And then Dina, if you don't mind, just for my context, share a little bit about what you do and how those superpowers help you when you are helping with business issues and challenges.
Well, I've been in sales for many, many, many years in different capacities. I am a coach. I'm not a coach within, let's say, the coach within April's organization. I'm a life coach from World Coaching Institute. And I've been teaching and involved with kids. I tutor kids for 40 years. I've been helping adults get tutoring them and getting their mortgage licenses. I kind of that vein. And I was an actress, so I was on the stage when I was younger. So kind of comes natural for me to learn scripts or learn, things to say to people. So I'm a closer. When I say that, my selling style is relationships. I'm not a, hey, this kind of, so I set a relationship first. It isn't, it might take a little longer, and I've always been told, you don't need to do that, Well, it's now, in these days, that's what you have to do. Selling is different. And so I'm a big relationship person, and it has paid off tenfold as far as sales go. I also had a couple businesses that I closed. I had 4 Subway stores in Hawaii, the first ones, and I closed them because we used to cut everything, the meats, everything, and then they went to those packaged things, and I couldn't do it. So I sold them, for those reasons. I've had a catering business for 35 years and a couple restaurants, other restaurants, and closed those. I still cater. When asked, because people that know me, that kind of thing. I love using my hands and being creative. And I use that in sales.
Yep.
As far as being creative, coming up with different ways, different things for whatever I'm offering, different ways for people to obtain the item, whether it be a product or service. Because a lot of times, they'll come up with certain objections, and I love to figure out ways to overcome the objections. So
I love that, Dina. And one of the things that stood out to me from what you just said is that you have stage experience. You were a performer, you were an actress, and I'm not sure if you encounter this a lot, but with our clients, a lot of times the idea of sales is very scary to them. They don't feel super confident, or they're not sure if they're worth it. And, again, we talk about how sometimes their personal identity is tied into the identity of the business. So if the sale doesn't go through, they take it as a personal failure. So anyways, regardless of whatever their motivations or hesitations, a lot of our clients struggle when it comes to sales. So I think that you probably have a unique gift and opportunity with having that stage performer kind of experience, that you can go into something and you can act confidently, even if you may not feel it in your heart. So I would imagine that you can probably talk to quite a few people to say, hey, like, here's some tips and tricks on how to appear confident, even if, you're a little bit sheepish when it comes to sales. Wow, say that 7 times fast. So I would imagine that that's probably one of your natural gifts and talents too, is translating that skill set from the stage into a sales presentation or a sales conversation. So I love that.
I can do that. And a lot of times I just tell the salespeople, because they get that instant rejection, and they take it personally. And so my motto is, some will, some won't, so what? And so, and then keep going, you just go on to your next call. So with that in mind, if the salespeople, because I've taught sales people for many years as well, and matter of fact, I'm still doing it, and in different capacities, and that's the premise. Keep going. 100 calls a day is what should be your goal, not 50, not 25. It should be 100 calls a day in order to get 10 to listen to you, in order to get 1 to buy. So it's fun. I enjoy it. I talk to everybody. Where I'm in an elevator, how everybody stands facing the front and everybody's in the elevator. I turn around and I face the people. I turn around, look, and I go, hi, how you doing? How's everybody? It's just so annoying to be in an elevator. It's so, that feeling of people behind you and you don't have any conversation. So
it's so funny, the differences and feeling like, because I think an elevator ride sometimes is so awkward. So if I ever ride an elevator, I hope someone like you is on there to talk and break through the social barriers.
I was gonna say, my favorite social media post is when they say the best thing you can say in an elevator is group hug and see who buys it. But in COVID days, that may not be so inviting, but so Brenda and Joe Bag of Donuts, is there anything you all want to add into the conversation before we give Hannah back the rest of her afternoon? Joe Bag of Donuts is fine. He doesn't want to add even a supernatural power, huh? What about you, Miss Friend?
Have you read the book, The On Purpose Person?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay.
Should I check it out?
Go ahead.
No, thank you for your insight. It was, very insightful, and I enjoyed listening to your advice and your practices. Very awesome. Thank you.
I hope this was helpful, and I appreciate you guys taking time. I know we're all busy and there's always things we could be doing elsewhere. There's always a million things tugging on us to get done. So I really appreciate you guys hanging out and spending this time and sharing your insights and your gifts and how that helps you in your businesses. So I appreciate the learning from you guys just as much.
It's always a joy to spend time with you, Hannah. You are a living example of this opportunity, and we invite people to consider the thought patterns that are available to them, because they do we all get to make choice of how. And what I heard you say is basically the foundation of the XYZ statement that you all teach for predictive, if I understand it correctly. Yes.
Aligning your thoughts and your purpose to the benefit of those around you. So that's pretty much a different way, I guess, of talking about the XYZ statement, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been a joy, everyone. We'll give you an extra 13 minutes of your day, and we will see you next month. We will have Miss Kelly joining us from the Insurance Association with a whole nother perspective. So the women that are willing to overcome as well, and then we'll be having men over in the following months after that. So add all the different perspectives. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, April. Bye, guys.
Bye.